Hey, it's Mr. Shrum, and I am back again with the respiratory system lesson walkthrough. We learned about the respiratory system function last time. Now we're going to look at the breathing. So how do you breathe? How do you ventilate? How do you get those lungs filled with air? Breathing is vital to life. If you can't breathe, you're going to die within 5 minutes. So being able to breathe is really great. And ventilation or breathing is moving air into and out of your lungs. It's divided into two stages. We call it inspiration, which is inhalation, expiration, which is exhalation. Moving air in to your lungs, in, expiring air, you're exhaling. It's getting out, okay? The lungs are protected by the ribs that surround them. Immediately beneath the lungs is the dome-shaped diaphragm, which is composed of muscle and tendon. During ventilation, air passes through the respiratory tract. The air moved in during inspiration is filtered by hairs in your nose and respiratory cilia and mucus in the nose and trachea. The air is warmed by heat given off by blood vessels close to the surface of the airways, and it's moistened by the wet surface of the airways. The air moved out during expiration is cooled as it leaves the warmer chest region. It loses its moisture on the cooler upper airways through condensation. And on a cold day, you can see the remaining water vapor as you exhale. The condensation of water in your nasal passages may cause your nose to drip on colder days. Inspiration is known as inhalation. You are forced to breathe when you receive stimuli such as increased plasma carbon dioxide, increased plasma acidity, which are hydrogen ions, and then reduced plasma oxygen. So when these things occur, you are forced to breathe. These stimuli act upon chemical receptors or chemoreceptors and in certain arteries and in the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is the portion of the brainstem known as the respiratory center. It receives input from the chemoreceptors and then sends electrical impulses to the muscles between the ribs and the diaphragm. During inhalation, muscles between the ribs cause the rib cage to move up and outward. The diaphragm contracts and flattens. That increases the size of your chest cavity. Then the lungs expand, which decreases the intrathoracic pressure, causing air to rush into the lungs. So that means we breathe with negative pressure. So the lungs expand and the pressure inside is low, and thus air is forced into it through negative pressure. The air that you breathe in is a mixture of gases, 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, 0.04% carbon dioxide, or CO2. The process of expiration is known as exhalation. Normally, it's a passive process, and when the lungs are stretched and expanded, stretch receptors within the alveoli send nerve impulses to the medulla oblongata. Then the medulla oblongata stops sending signals to the rib cage and diaphragm. The elastic fibers with the lung recoil and pull the rib cage down and in. The diaphragm relaxes and rises. So it's the opposite of the inhalation process. Exhalation, these actions decrease the size of the chest cavity. So when the lungs retract, it increases intrathoracic pressure, and that rushes the air out of your lungs, okay? If there's too much pressure, the air escapes and leaves your body. when a person is breathing faster and deeper. For example, if they're exercising hard, additionally, muscles in the rib cage forcefully contract and push more air out of the lungs. However, during rest, those muscles are not activated. So your body works harder to breathe if you're straining your body. The air that is exhaled is a different mixture of gases than before. So the air you're exhaling is 16% oxygen, 4% carbon dioxide, and 80% nitrogen. So there's more CO2 being exhaled than once you inhaled. And that's the mechanics of breathing. And now I am going to look at issues. We're going to look at respiration. So we talked about breathing, ventilation, how do you get airs into your lungs? Now we're going to look at respiration, gas exchange. And we divide respiration into two phases, external and internal. External respiration is the exchange of gases between the air in the alveoli and the blood within the pulmonary capillaries. Internal respiration is the exchange of gases between the blood within the capillaries and the tissue fluid surrounding the body's cells. External respiration occurs as gases diffuse simultaneously across the thin walls of the alveoli. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the air. Oxygen diffuses from the air into the blood. When CO2, or carbon dioxide, is in the blood, it is dissolved in plasma as bicarbonate. Bicarbonate looks like this. And it does that so it can be transported to the lungs. When the blood enters the pulmonary capillaries, the bicarbonate ion is converted back into CO2. And this is before, so preparatory to diffusing into the air during your external respiration. Oxygen levels in the air causes the hemoglobin in your red blood cells to become almost completely saturated with oxygen. And that forms oxyhemoglobin. So you take oxygen, you add hemoglobin, you get oxyhemoglobin. And that appears red. Internal respiration is the exchange of gases between the blood within the capillaries and the tissue fluid surrounding the body's cells. Internal respiration occurs as gases diffuse into the tissues or capillaries. Oxygen diffuses into the tissues because there is less oxygen in the tissues than in the capillaries. When the hemoglobin releases the oxygen into the tissues, it forms deoxyhemoglobin. So once it gains oxygen, we call it oxyhemoglobin. And once it releases the oxygen, it's called deoxyhemoglobin. And that appears deep purple or bluish. So we have oxygenated red blood, and then deoxygenated blood is darker color. Carbon dioxide diffuses into the capillaries because there is less carbon dioxide in the capillaries than in the tissues. As carbon dioxide returns to the blood from the capillaries, it is again dissolved by plasma into bicarbonate and transported to the lungs. So it becomes bicarbonate to be transported. The atmosphere can cause issues for external and internal respiration, such as mountain sickness and decompression sickness. Mountain sickness occurs at high altitudes. So if you ever plan to climb a mountain or go very high into the air, the oxygen pressure is really low. So not a lot of oxygen is available for hemoglobin to bind to, and so the cells are not able to function as efficiently. So if you go up to high altitudes, your body will not be functioning as efficiently. Symptoms include headaches, shortness of breath, rapid heart rate, nausea, fatigue and weakness, impaired mental function. Natives who live in high mountains have adapted to the low oxygen levels. For example, individuals develop enlarged barrel chests to increase alveolar ventilation, produce increased amounts of red blood cells and hemoglobin, and develop new tissue capillaries to increase gas diffusion in the tissues. Problems can also occur if you have too much pressure. When deep sea diving, there are high levels of pressure on the lungs. This causes gases such as nitrogen to be dissolved in great quantities in the diver's tissues. If the diver comes up too fast, nitrogen will come out of the solution and form damaging bubbles. Those bubbles cause decompression sickness, and it goes by the name of the bends. The bubbles may plug blood vessels, rupture nerves, create pain in the joints. So if you ever plan to dive, which I think you should, it's pretty fun, but you have to be careful coming up too fast. Your body has to adjust. And if you do it too quickly, you can hurt yourself and die. Really, it's not a good thing to go through. External and internal respiration make it possible for tissues within the body to receive the oxygen they need to perform their functions efficiently. And that's that. So we looked at ventilation, which is breathing, and respiration. And next time we're going to look at the issues that can occur. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.